Hello, my name is Jeff Fuller. I'm the Prince William County GOP Election Integrity Chair, and I've been serving as a um, unofficial coordinator, for lack of a better term, for the Virginia Election Integrity and Transparency Alliance, which is a basically conservative or Republican organizations in Northern Virginia and somewhat beyond who are involved in election integrity and concerned about it. So I'm going to give you a wrap up of a project we started at the request of one of our uh, members so that we can kind of document what happened and what we found. I think it's important when we have these conversations about election integrity and transparency that we don't forget the transparency part of the equation. This survey done in 2021, I don't think the situation's gotten any better since then, um, basically says in effect that 50% of the population, both Democrat and Republican, do not have uh, do not trust the election system, and this is it's unsustainable and it's got to be fixed. So everything that we do should be trying to increase the confidence of the electorate in the system, but not by BSing them, but by actually making the system more open, understandable, simple, and elegant. So our aim was to do a top level assessment, just look at the key components, and our intent was to be able to inform ourselves and others who are including officials on the results of our effort. So one of the useful things that I think you might find interesting is we defined the election system to include the operations aspect plus the components. So the election operations are affected by Department of Elections at the top, the various electoral boards jurisdictions, of which I can't remember how many there are, but there's over 100. The precincts within each of the jurisdictions, uh, which is our early early voting central precinct for absentee ballot uh, manipulations and calculations and counting and so forth, and then election day precincts. The This landscape is established in law at the U.S. government level for federal elections, and then, of course, state law for our state elections. We identified these 7 election components, which you can do this in different ways, but this seemed to make sense, and for the purposes of describing the system and analyzing it. And then we asked the question: is the level or function of that component of and level of the system critical? And we identified those we thought were, and some we didn't know. Then we went through, and this is just an illustration of the vulnerability and risk of management of each of those components. We identified, for example, the Albert sensor system was number one in terms of an issue that needs to be addressed, as it represents a federal intrusion into our state in spades. The Albert system exists at the Information Technology Center of the state, Commonwealth, and in Prince William County and a number of other counties, we believe widely throughout the Commonwealth. And with regard to hardware and software, can it be tested? Can it be evaluated? Basically, we decided you can't do it. There's Because the proprietary nature of the system and the software makes it impossible for any competent uh, tester or evaluator to get inside of it. And then, of course, we highlighted the problems with ERIC, which fortunately the Commissioner of Elections pulled the plug on. So this framework here illustrates the 4 courses of action we considered and the major uh, considerations such as confidence in the solution, the time required, the cost, and then we ranked them from highest to lowest. The first one, no change, was not acceptable. Too important. Our franchise is at risk. Our country's at risk. The acquiring an assured system, at first, at least to me and several of us, seemed like a possible alternative. I mean, after all, Department of Defense acquires the F-22 fighter jet with very complex systems, hardware and software, and human interfaces, and so forth, and sustainability and maintenance. So it seems possible. However, we concluded that course of action is not feasible because there are so many vulnerabilities in the hardware and software. And even if you started from scratch with a whole new system and put it through all the rigor that you would expect of a F-22 flight control system by Department of Defense, we concluded that because of the way it is distributed throughout the country and supported and interacted with, there's no way that such a system could be designed to be secure against a determined and sophisticated intruder. So we assessed that to be not acceptable. So we just summarize our assessment of the overall picture, that there's four legs to the stool. There's a fair election system, which is what we kind of focus on when we think about elections. Then there's fair government action. There's campaign finance law and informed electorate. Those are the four legs of the stool that are necessary to have for our franchise to be protected. The information election component or informed electorate component is basically attacked by systematic psychological operations mounted by the government of the United States and the Democratic Party and the progressive cabal associated with them. The campaign finance law has been systematically attacked, and there's some evidence of that, but more and more is coming out on that process. And of course, we expect fair government action, but we don't get it. We've got a government that is basically putting its foot on the scale and attempting to influence the outcome of elections in big time ways. And finally, with regard to the fair election system, I've already mentioned that is being attacked in terms of the hardware, the software, the processes, absentee balloting, and so forth. So our focus for the purposes of this study was the election system, the thing we usually think of when we think of elections. But we can't forget the significant part that the other plays. For example, for psychological operations aspect, just the FBI and the Justice Department holding back information on the Hunter and basically shedding shade on the Hunter Biden laptop was estimated to have significantly affected voters' choices, up to 17% impact on voters either staying home or not voting for Biden. Well, CISA declared in 2020, after the 2020 election, and shortly after, that it was the most secure election in American history. By that time, many of us knew that was not the case. So what did we observe? Well, we saw a concerted psychological operation campaign with being conducted throughout the United States in mainstream media, social media, and in print media, all sorts of media, spreading the word that there was no problem with the election, and that in fact information available to the public was wildly distorted in terms of disinformation and blocking information that might that was truthful but was unuseful to the powers to be. We saw a significant attack by the progressive cabal on the election financing system, most notably using Vote Blue contributors' accounts to contribute significant amount of money to uh, the non-government organizations that are involved in this and actual candidates. We saw, of course, and when we did this analysis, it hadn't even begun in major form, but government agency weaponization to punish enemies and reward allies. And then basically election system attack on the election system through various control apparatus, ERIC for providing information to the progressive cabal, Albert censors, and a significant attack on the absentee ballot system. You see at the bottom here the 2000 mule documentation of voters of somebody stuffing absentee ballots into ballot boxes that were unsecured. So uh, because we had no opportunity to change the law, we backed off and kind of regrouped. And thanks to the encouragement, especially of Mike from Prince William, we got back together with a number of the same players that worked on the assessment, but mostly uh, Elizabeth uh, and Mike from Prince William, and then a number of others who I'll recognize in a minute. These are the issues. I'm just going to walk through each of them in summary so you get a sense of what we were talking about. First, on the first issue, we believe that the local elections have to prepare for and practice paper elections in the event of a loss of power, a crisis, some huge disaster related to the machines, data systems, or whatever. You can come up with lots of scenarios, but the law requires it, but we don't practice it. So we're encouraging each election integrity unit or citizens group to encourage their um, Office of Elections to at least include some training and instruction and maybe job aids on how to do a election if you lose power and you lose something else that causes you to have to literally hand count the votes. The second one is we are concerned about the post office. The post office is full of basically hard-charging postal union workers. They are strongly aligned with the progressive wing of the party in general, and there have been reported cases of malfeasance associated with them. So, if you're worried about that, and we're not saying that there is any post office that's acting inappropriately, but there have been some. And voters are concerned about this. So we recommend if you have any concerns at all about what to do with your absentee ballot, to make sure it gets counted, to do two things. One, deliver the ballot to an early vote precinct and put it in the drop box, which means it will be delivered directly to the general registrar's office at the end of the day. Also, sign up for ballot tracks or the equivalent, which is basically a third party vendor that informs you of the progress of your ballot from the time it's mailed to you till you drop it back into the system through mail or the drop box, and then when it's scanned, and then when it's actually tabulated. So if you follow that, then you'll be able to see the progress of your ballot, and it's more difficult for third parties to make it disappear or whatever. The fourth one is educate lawmakers and officials. I'm sorry, the third and fourth are basically educating lawmakers on ranked choice voting. In other words, we don't like it, and there's good reasons for it, and on other election integrity and transparency issues. Our working group wanted to recognize those as important issues, but they are the work of the Virginia Free Election Crowd, and we're grateful for what they do for basically election integrity widely in Virginia. An invaluable resource, and they do a lot of hard and good work. So we just wanted to recognize those as two key issues. They're probably rolling in more into 2025, given the focus on the election. Number 5 is Commissioner of Elections allows batch comparison audits in federal elections. Shelley from Loudon single-handedly made this happen in 2023, and they actually did it in Loudon, a very successful operation. But the way the rules are written by Election Commissioner Beals is that they can only be done on elections within the jurisdiction of the general registrar. What that means is no federal elections, no elections that cross boundaries. Like in Prince William, the sheriff crosses the boundary of the county and the city of Manassas and Manassas Park. So that's probably, it's a heavy lift, but I believe that's still being worked by Shelley, so we want to keep visibility on it. Number 6 is investigate non-citizens voting, and number 9 is related to checking and making sure that citizenships are checked and so forth. Essentially, both of those have been overcome by Governor Youngkin in his recent executive order. Now, there's probably some, I can say without hesitation, there's some things about that order that I don't like, not because the words and the thoughts are not good, but because the implication of the letter is that we're all hunky-dory with regard to the machines. And the claim that we're counting paper ballots should be basically changed to the machines are counting paper ballots. No human counts the paper ballots unless it's a batch comparison or some other kind of challenge like a tie. So there's that, but we're grateful for that, and we believe that's going to be an important deterrent on deterring folks from voting illegally. The 8th one is basically I'm a chief election officer in Prince William County. Probably not this year because of a number of factors in my personal life, but this basically would say that if a chief election officer has a situation where he has 10 more votes on his machine scanner than there were ballots provided to and accounted for, that he can count those ballots, make sure the ballot count is right, and if he wants to exercise additional caution, he can count the actual votes on those ballots to make sure that the machines are accurately reflecting the will of the voter or the intent of the voter. So that concludes my briefing. I'm including here my contact information, which you're welcome to contact me and discuss this. I hope the briefing provides some adequate response to the question, what was up with that project? Let me just say that this transitioned when we lost the legislature into a much more modest attempt to identify specific projects that could be done this year, and we're pursuing those. We had some success with the influence of the governor. We think we had an influence on the governor with regard to vetoing 15 bills offered by the Democrats to increase the vulnerability of our systems and the opportunities to cheat. But though we are working on several. Some of these seem to be of some utility, but they're definitely not as grand a scope as going to a paper election. So, thank you.